just so we're totally clear, the law of the land today allows a company like Tesco's to charge poor people 10% more on their shopping basket than people in the middle class area down the road.
It does not allow them to trade anti-competitively, to exclude their rivals that might want to come in and charge lower prices. It does not allow them to collude, and it does not allow them to mislead or be dishonest with their consumers. And where we find that kind of egregious conduct, we act.
Okay, so we as a committee might conclude that there is a gap in the law. Okay, so they're identical, except this one was bought in the Castle Bromwich store in my constituency yesterday at £2.20. And this one was bought in the Quinton Superstore in the nice leafy middle class bit of Birmingham for £2. So there's a 10% difference between those two packets of Weetabix. And I suppose the question that I've got to ask is, why are my constituents in a poorer constituency being charged 10% more for the same product?
I think what you're probably referring to, one of those stores would be what we would call an express store and one we would call a superstore. And in our business, we have differential pricing models that reflect the cost of operation. So superstore prices, a price for grocery home shopping, and then price in express stores. We do charge a slightly different price in express store formats. That's ordinarily because those formats incur different costs around that. So clearly, if you're in a small store, if you talk about a large retail environment, we may have 3 or 4 large lorries a day making entire drops to one location. In small high street locations, we might make multiple drops to smaller stores.
So this was the differential pricing of chicken breasts between a Tesco Superstore and a Tesco Express store. So that's a 15% premium. We then looked at, say, lean diced beef. That's a 10% premium. We then ran a similar exercise for Sainsbury's on slide 2. So you can see Cheerios, 38% more expensive in a Sainsbury's local store. Shreddies, 11% more expensive in a Sainsbury's local store. And so if we just then look at slide 3, if you just take a fairly standard basket, the Tesco's basket in an express store was 11% more expensive than a larger store, 13% more expensive in a Sainsbury's store. I mean, Ed, how do you justify this?
Well, as has already been mentioned, there are very different operating costs involved in running a convenience chain, and each part of our business has to stand on its own 2 feet. So some additional points to bear in mind is that often convenience stores will have longer hours. We have additional costs with guarding now as well, and perhaps also we mentioned the fact that they have a smaller product range, maybe around 4,000 products, whereas a supermarket would have 35,000. So they're replenished more often, which incurs extra costs.
The argument that stores that are smaller and therefore often in poorer places should be more expensive comes down in your book to the fact that they may be more expensive to run. Sainsbury's profit last year was nearly £1 billion. Tesco's profit was nearly £2.8 billion. So both businesses are extremely profitable. And I suppose the question for us is, why are you charging higher prices for people who can only shop in smaller stores when actually there's not a profit problem at either of your companies? I mean, the dividends paid out by Sainsbury's last year were 306 million. Tesco's paid out dividends of 778 million. Most people looking at the premium you're charging for baskets in poor places and looking at this financial data could only conclude that you're profiting from poorer places when actually there isn't an acute financial need to do that. Isn't that the case, Dominic?
No, it's not the case. So the reason that our business was able to last year to derive those profits is because it's done the right things by our customers and the successful growth year on year. As I said, any price differential we operate is purely not based upon the demographics as you described. It's based upon operating those smaller store formats, as I've talked about from a Tesco point of view and as Ed's talked about from a Sainsbury's point of view. There are differential costs for doing it, the same way there are differential costs in dealing online.